Dr. Charmain Jackman. I am the founder of a company called InnoPsych, and we provide mental health access and resources. And part of the work that I get to do is I work with arts organizations, bringing mental health and well-being into those spaces. So I'm honored to be here. Thank you to ROXFILM for inviting me to moderate, and to all the artists on stage, congratulations. Can we give them another round of applause? So just to start off, so people know who you are, if you can say your name and which film you're associated with and your role.
Kevon Edward, I'm the director, writer, producer behind Bagay, Pòté, or The Things We Carry.
Hi, my name is Giles, and I'm the writer, director, producer, and editor for the last film we just saw, The Baltimore Barber.
Hi, I'm Maya Jagir, producer for His Name is Iku, and I'm here representing Titu because she couldn't be here tonight.
Hi everyone, my name is Charmain F. I'm here representing Until Further Notice.
Hi everyone, my name is Noe Samba, and I'm an actor from Until Further Notice.
So we have about 30 minutes, so we're going to get deep into this conversation. I have some questions for our panelists, and then I'll open it up for the audience. But I wanted to just start with locating us in some of your thinking about your creative direction. So we see the protagonists in each film go through some very painful experiences: immigration insecurity, grief, financial stress, maybe financial abuse, sexual trauma. What compelled you to tell this particular story, and why now?
That's a great question, and big shout out to ROXFILM Festival for curating such a beautiful block. I was sitting back watching it and I just saw how just well connected. I would say what inspired this story, I'm originally from St. Lucia, and what I see as my drive is to tell authentic Caribbean stories, and I just wanted to transport an audience into the world of St. Lucia and just see a slice of life that they hadn't before. And Bagay was inspired by my peer groups, seeing some talented cricketers who were friends, but also just prominent athletes who we see abroad on the Olympic stage who come from very humble beginnings, and I just wanted to tell a story that reflected our realities.
I love the joy in cricket. That'll be another story, but yes, that's another question. But it was wonderful to see the joy around cricket.
So I grew up in Boston in Roxbury, and I've seen a lot of gun violence from just have an uncle that was shot. I have a stepsister that was actually shot and killed in Boston last year. And I know it's just like a common thing no matter what city you live in, but I used to live in DC, and I would spend a lot of time in Baltimore, and I'm a journalist. So there was a barber who I used to have like a short fade, and he used to cut my hair. And he was just one day telling me how he had to get hair from the shop floor to finish a haircut in the mortuary. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, I've been here for years, and I've done a lot of these kids' first haircuts, but then sometimes when they get shot, I cut their hair in the morgue. I'm their favorite barber. I know how they like their hair. So it's like, it's a true story, the detail with the hair. And it just kind of haunted me. When I finished writing that story, I had pictures of the kid in the lead of my news story in my phone that his mom had sent me. And I was done with the story and deleted the pictures, and then the next morning the pictures were back in my phone. So I was like, oh, maybe they're in the cloud. So I deleted them from everywhere, and the next morning they were back in my phone. So I was like, okay, what else am I supposed to do? So then I wrote a whole feature-length script, and this is a proof of concept for that.
I know this is a topic that's very close to Titu's heart. She actually texted me something to read to all of y'all, so that's what I'm going to do. Thank you so much, Roxbury International Film Festival, for showing this film. I'm sorry that I couldn't make it today. I'd like to thank the cast and crew for all their hard work, our executive producers, Men Healing, which is a nonprofit that we partnered with, and they have incredible resources for men that are struggling with their mental health from sexual abuse. All my friends and family who supported me financially and emotionally with encouraging words. My desire for this film is that it gets to be seen by that male survivor who has kept his hurt of sexual violence a secret. I hope this film will encourage him to seek the help that he needs. I hope that it will give him the courage to break that wall of shame and speak up. That's why we collaborated with Men Healing and including the film in their HOME book, a collaborative interactive workbook and ebook that is designed specifically for male survivors of trauma and sexual assault to help them process violation, dispel myths, and find recovery. We had a screening at a local church in Boston, and we had a lot of mental health professionals come and speak, and there were a lot of people in the room that stood up to talk about stories from their own family members or lives. And I know that this is a really prevalent thing of men not wanting to or too scared to come out and talk about the things that have happened to them. So I know that this is a big reason why Titu wanted to make this film, is to maybe encourage or help survivors find their voice to be able to come forward.
First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for coming, and thank you, Charmain, for hosting, and thanks to Roxbury Film Festival. This is actually a proof of concept. This short is a proof of concept for a feature titled Fireflies Don't Burn. And what's interesting is that in the feature, Chasha, the character that Noni played so wonderfully, is actually just another character. She's not the protagonist. But as I was developing, I wrote the feature first, and I wanted to do a proof of concept shot so I can promote the feature. And I was struggling to compress it, or I was just mainly looking at the protagonist, but I kept on getting drawn into Chacha, one of the characters, and I decided to focus on her. And in the background, I think when I was writing it, America was happening. ICE was prowling, around the streets, and I was reading news about that time when it was so intense, when people were so scared. So I started thinking about that, because in the feature she has an immigration problem, but then I just came up with this idea of just getting denied asylum in a time, especially when the character is a trans woman. That adds another layer. Like, where do they return to? Do they return to a country that could possibly have killed? So I think I started to think about immigration, because I am an immigrant. I've been living here for about 27 years now. So I started to think about all the immigrants, whether legal or not legal, and the predicament that they're in. So that's really what inspired us, just the current climate that we're in. And I started to think about the story from at least more like internal conflict for the character and the people who are actually going through this.
I want to speak on this relation because I think I came in as an actor much later, but I'll just say that immigration is something that has been close to my heart, because I'm an immigrant, and interestingly, when Chacha offered me this role, I just got my citizenship. Wow. So I felt like the character's journey was parallel to mine, but in a very different way. So she got the United States and I got mine, and I became a citizen. But also, because immigration is very prevalent in America right now, it's always been But I think right now, I thought it was very interesting for trans women to be the flag bearer for that story, because it could have been anybody. It could have been, I don't know, someone from Algeria or Mexico, so not even someone who's trans, but I think that it was opening up the imagination, because in our world it's real, but I don't know if it, for when people think of immigration stories, I don't know if they think of a trans woman as the person who they would think of. So I thought it was beautiful that we conceived the protagonist for such issues to be trans women, and you know, obviously stakes are higher and kind of illuminate what that really means. Yeah, so I was drawn to the character.
Very powerful. So in all your films, there's a theme of grief. But you each had a unique way of talking about grief. Some of it was explicit, some of it was more kind of hidden. I'm curious, as you wrote or directed, how did that impact you as an artist? And then also, how do you think about the viewer experiencing the grief? You can switch it up. To you guys.
Who wants to go first?
So I had it. Wait, how did you think about grief?
Yeah, I mean, yours is very powerful, right? That's very explicit. Others was more implicit. But as you thought about grief, how did that kind of impact you? What other, what did it bring up for you as a creator? And then how did you think about the viewer? Or did you think about it?
I did. I wanted it to be kind of a shocking reveal at the end, because a lot of times, especially with gun violence, people have so many hopes and dreams, and we all think, tomorrow. There's tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, but for sometimes there's not a tomorrow, and you don't even really get started. So in my reporting, I thought a lot about just all of the people that have been, with gun violence, killed by gun violence, and how they barely even got to get started. And so I wanted to pay homage to that. And also with the barber, in real life, I had asked him, do you talk to a therapist? And he was very cavalier about it, no, I don't, it's just something that I do. I don't even have time for therapy. He's he was just kind of whatever, you just have to do what you have to do. Somebody has to do it, so I'm just doing it. And that was a very interesting attitude. But it's an attitude that I think is common in inner city. In the Black community, I think it's common to just take on a job because it needs to be done. And then I talked to a lot of the different men in my life, specifically my brother, because my brother has I have a nephew, and I asked him, well, what do you think about this film? And he was like, well, no one cares about men's feelings. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was just like, no one cares about men's feelings. People only care what a man can do for them. No one asks me how I'm doing. And that just broke my heart so much. So I started to see this barber as someone that I'm well, who asks you how you're doing and who checks on you? And it made me re-examine my attitude towards men. So I asked a lot of guys, because I'm a woman writing this film from a male perspective, but I asked a lot of guys, and what came up was this feeling of no one cares about how I feel, my feelings don't matter, it's not important to talk about my feelings. And I was just I really don't like that. So that's another, aside from, yes, the gun violence, there's also just this, that men are supposed to be strong and not cry, and all of this that I think is tenfold in certain cultural communities where men are just not shown as having feelings. So yeah, that's kind of, that's what I thought about grief.
But your story is very similar with Jamarcus, right? Oh, you did Ibu. My bad. Sorry. Yes.
Yes. Watching it again, I haven't watched it in a while, and remembering the way that we crafted the trauma flashback and thinking about, T2 had a crew out in Nairobi, and they filmed the flashback there. And I remember seeing that footage, and I was like, oh, this is going to be good. This is going to be impactful. And watching it back and seeing this now again and thinking how often does that happen, that something's happened in your life that's traumatic, and you're in this moment and all of a sudden something triggers it, and you didn't know it was you didn't know. And you're shaking and you're having these moments that you're not in control anymore. And I think that it was a really beautiful way to get that across with the audience, of having us feel that moment with Iku. And so yeah, I think even in just like a flashback, you can really get that emotion.
You also, I mean, you can do the group, but you also clearly show the flashback, panic attack with the cha-cha.
Yeah, I think for me was I wanted it to be subtle, and I don't want to put anything like on the surface, like so we really truly understand her fears in a subtle way. I was thinking about how does one navigate when they know that any minute it could be it in terms of it's still happening now in terms of ICE coming into the neighborhood or ICE coming. So I think I wanted to show that internal fear that she has as she's walking down the streets, which is inside the salon. Just having this anxiety after being denied asylum and knowing that she could be next, and how do you? And I'm thinking about people who are actually going through this. How do you live in a country that is that you came to for safety, but now you are the enemy, and you are sort of like in limbo, and you live in fear. So that's what I wanted to capture, like that internal fear that people are going through.
I think even in talking about grief, my favorite definition of grief is like love without a place to go. And as an immigrant, experience is obviously different for every other immigrant, but for me, I've had to reimagine what home feels like. And reclaim that. So I imagine for Cha-Cha, having that snatched away, so the grief in that is having a love, a place to go, and how do you kind of channel that? Because what I was thinking of is, the home and the life and the love that you reimagine that feels true to you, that's anchored in your reality, and then that's kind of taking, like Cha-Cha, like Tata said, limbo. Now it's like, where do I go? I can't go back. And now we put that kind of state here.
This thing about immigrants, right? It's like home, and you kind of have this static image of home, but home moves on when you're away. So even when you go back, it's not what you. You're gonna change. Yeah.
One of my favorite poems, actually was going to read it, but I don't have my phone. Was sung, I encourage everyone to read it. Was on Shirin. The poem is titled Home. It's about
you're okay.
And if I remember a little bit about what the poem says. Yes, home is a mouth of a shack. Like going back to a mouth of a shack. When home rejects you, and now for her character, she's here, she's feeling safety and all that. She's being spewed into this wilderness where she has to go back to the mouth of a shack.
Oh yeah, she can. Come on. Oh yeah.
Involved in whether it's like war or just rejection and
She wanted to
violence.
make sure she wasn't blocking your You're okay.
I think just very briefly for Bagay, I think it's just one of the elements.
These themes of hope and joy in your film.
I think for me it was like a major part because I wanted to show the ambition that he had and his talents and just what it would look like for a young cricketer to envision a different future for himself. And really I wanted to create an environment in the film where he's, at a crossroads between pursuing for his family and fending for them and doing not so righteous things, and then go in the path of his dreams and how those two things battle each other. And I think it's important to just show that anchor, especially from a West Indian perspective, that there is hope, there is a future, and you know, it's about his work ethic and going for it. So.
For me, it was, I think a lot of times when you hear about stories about gun violence, it just presents this image that like it's a neighborhood without much hope. The kids aren't good kids and they don't dream of doing anything different. But you know, when I was reporting this story, I spent a lot of time in the barbershop, and there was this one boy I talked to, and I asked him why did he think there was so much gun violence, and he said, because people just want to be known for something. You know, this was in Baltimore, the schools don't have heat, and there's not a lot of opportunities, and I was just like, that makes so much sense. Like, as a human, you have this desire to leave your mark on the world, and I think that for the character that's Scooter, for him to talk about his future hopes and dreams, I wanted to show that, these kids that are coming from these neighborhoods where they're kind of counted out from the beginning, they have a lot of great ideas. Some of them are really good kids. Everyone has the potential to be like a really good kid or whatever. So I guess I just wanted to show that there's hope and future there. I wanted people to care about his character and see him beyond his circumstances. And there's this quote, I don't know who said it, but that like some of the best ideas are in the graveyard, because either the life is cut short or people just, they think they have another day and another day, and they never pursue their great ideas. So the film is also kind of my calling to appreciate the time that you have and to not wait until tomorrow, because kind of anything could happen. So that's why I wanted to show a little bit of hope and just to get people to think differently about this stereotypical type of character in a barbershop.
There's healing. There are resources. I think the hope in what we're showing, and his name is Iku, is that you can find healing. And I love that the final shot is Kia and Iku holding hands, because Iku's not healed yet, but he's taking those steps. He's recognizing that okay, I can't talk about this, and he lets Kia touch her and touch him, and there's healing, and it's possible, and you can get help. And I think that's such an important thing, and I love that we put at the end about men healing, because 1 in 4 men suffer from sexual abuse, and it's important that this is a topic that we can talk about and discuss. So there's hope and there's healing.
So when I think about hope, I'm thinking about the ending, because I was intentional in not leaving it ambiguous, letting the audience decide or think about what could be next for her. But when I think about, now that you asked the question, I think the ending is hopeful in a way that she is taking action. She is not waiting to be captured. She is being strategic. She is closing shop, but it's not permanent, which means there's a chance that she could come back if she can figure things out. It's closed until further notice. So that's not completely shutting down. So for me, that's hopeful, because she has to figure her life out. She has to maybe, I don't know where she's going. I've been asked where my character's going. I have no idea where she's going. I am thinking she's probably going to go to Canada, or she's going to go underground. Where do you go? You're not going. She's definitely not going back to her country. That is for sure. So I think there's hope in that, where at least she's not sitting in the
I think even though the film is kind of somber, dark, however you want to call it, for me, I'll even take it back. I think hope is in giving the character a full life, that this character exists in, what do you want to call it, poetic cinema, I don't know. the imagination of the character, and given how I feel like, I imagine that she's someone who we like to think of the ideal immigrant. She has a business, she pays her taxes, she beautifies women, she has a space where people come to laugh. She's a real businesswoman, and for me, imagine a trans woman who has a full life that way, I think is the hope. This happens and she has to figure out how she's going to live in this country. But I think the world building for the character is hopeful for me. I think being able to imagine her that way is hopeful.
Excellent, thank you. One question for the audience. Come down to the front, Leslie.
Okay, loved all the films. I'm curious because creative expression is good for your mental health. As a creator, there's so much benefit in it, but it's also very vulnerable. It involves a lot of rejection when you're polishing, all of that. So how do you balance the creative process with the other side of it, and what does that self-care look like for you?
That's a really good question. I take a lot of walks. I have to walk every day because I have a dog that walks me. So that's good. But in terms of creativity, I also find drawing to be therapeutic for me. Like I like to sit and do. I'm now into watercolors, and I find that just sitting and trying to figure it out and letting go, because I think if you know my style of drawing is about control, because I use fine pen for my actual drawings. But then now I'm getting into watercolors, and I find that to be therapy for me, because I'm learning to let go and let the ink flow to another area. And I'm like, where are you going? But I think it's been very helpful. So I have certain days when I know this is, especially when I'm working, when I'm teaching. Fridays I'm off. I try to do my creativity Friday. I try to walk every day. I meditate in the morning. I meditate at night. And I definitely try to remember to take care of myself when I can.
I would say for me, in terms of balancing everything, I do a lot of meditation as well. That keeps the head level. But I think also just being in spaces like this one, for example, like coming out and being in a community where your work is appreciated, I think that's more of the focus for me, and the gratitude versus what was rejected, because that's not home, this is home. So I focus on the real community and then just being present with that.
So, to be honest with you, I don't think about that too much, and I don't think that's a good thing. Maybe I'm like a crazy, artsy person, but I think there's a little bit of suffering in art, where sometimes you go to these dark places and you have to be a little bit disturbed. Because sometimes the things I write about, they upset me, and I talk to my husband about them and stuff like that. So I do think there's a little bit of suffering in art. But I read this other thing, which I don't know who said it, but it made me feel better about writing drama and psychological, thriller type of things, and I also like horror films, is that people who look in the dark are trying to find the light. So I tell myself that the reason why I'm so invested in these kinds of stories is because I'm looking for the light. Yeah.
So thank you all. Can we give them a get a therapist. I think I hear the dark stories, and I was actually thinking about you. I was like, oh, I wonder what she does for self-care. Well,